Looks like you're letting people in, Christy.
Mm, Other people in the waiting room?
Well, I thought I just saw somebody come in, but I didn't let them in, so that's why I said that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't see anybody there. Um, but we'll continue to let people in. Hopefully we'll get a few new folks. If we have not yet met, my name's Christy Hudson. I use she, her pronouns. I am Transformation Manager for the System of Care Advisory Council. Thanks for joining us. This is a monthly learning collaborative for anyone, everyone who is working in or cares about Oregon System of Care. So, System of Care coordinators, youth and family members, who are living in the system, providers, agency partners, kind of everyone is welcome. And this is a space where we connect and learn collaboratively about a variety of topics. And today we're going to do something a little bit different and something that has been requested by many of you, which is to kind of take a pause in learning new information to reflect on what we have learned and how we are hopefully using that information in our systems. So that is going to be a bit of the conversation today, a little bit different. If you are new to the System of Care Learning Collaborative, or I guess just we'll do intros in the chat. If you want to say a quick hello, share your name, your pronouns, what system of care region you are representing today, kind of your role or what brings you here today. That would be great. And yes, we're excited that Haley Van Horn is back. Welcome back,
Thank you,
Haley.
Prince.
We're very excited to see you. Wonderful. Okay. All right. Well, got a slideshow for you. Let me bring this up while you all introduce yourselves. Oh, and note to self, we're going to play these videos, right? So I need to share sound and optimize for video clip. Okay. Okay. Everybody can see my screen.
Yep.
So yeah, like I said, today we are going to take a bit of a pause on anything new and instead review and reflect on the learning collaboratives that we've had since January. And as we have a little bit of a review kind of teed up for you and some cute little recordings of what has happened in the past. So this is great. If you didn't make it or you weren't around or whatever, this can kind of catch you up on what we've discussed. And as we go through this review, think about these four questions. What actions have you taken, if any, as a result of these topics? How has the information learned and discussed here impacted your system of care's continuum of services and supports? What system barriers is your region continuing to face? And what is your next step? What else would you like to do from here? So there are kind of four topics we're gonna go over. One was back in February, we had a conversation about early and periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment. Then University of Connecticut led a few collaboratives on system of care governance structures, the system reform support instrument, which many of you, not all of you, but many of you participated in. And then we had a couple of sessions on data-driven decision making and really infusing data into your system. So that's what we're going to talk about. And Selby, I'm going to turn it over to you. So excited to have you kind of sharing and presenting out today. Thank you so much. And I will just continue to advance and be ready to show these videos when it's time.
Okay, I was going to say, I also have the videos
Oh, you do?
queued up. Yeah, I
Oh,
wasn't sure
well, if you have them queued up, should I just stop sharing and you can share? That's probably better.
Sure.
Okay, because I did not have time to queue them up.
So I guess as long as I have sharing permissions.
You should.
So I think most people on here know me, but just for people who are new to me, my name's Selby Stebbins. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the System of Care Specialist for the Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas County System of Care, and I'm based at Health Share of Oregon in Portland. And I am the System of Care coordinator representative on the planning committee for this learning collaborative. And so I offered to go through our materials from the last few months and pick out a few key points that resonated with me and share them with you and see what you think and see, but just to kind of remind us what we addressed and learned about the last couple of months. All right, let me give a try at sharing my screen now. Well, let's see. Okay. All right, I believe that's working now. So I'm going to move ahead then. All right, so the first topic we addressed back in February was around EPSDT, or the early and periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment. And so as I reviewed those materials, a few key points that I thought were really important to just sum up what that learning collaborative about was just to remember that everyone under age 21 has these benefits automatically. Nothing else needs to be done. And so when we think about covering the young people in the families we work with, if there's challenges or they need services, our minds should hopefully automatically just be recognizing that there's this new EPSDT program covering everyone under age 21, and nothing special needs to be done for them to access these benefits. And that kids and youth can get a lot of different needs met via this program, so it's important to know about it. It covers all medically necessary and medically appropriate services, including screening services. I know that a lot of us hear about challenges in getting screening services for the kids in our community, but I thought this was really important to note that no prior authorization is required for those screening services. And so again, it just feels like such a relief to me to know that this is available, and I have referred several people in my community to check out this program when they're struggling to figure out how to get services for some of the kids. So the one other thing that really stuck out to me, and that I'll play a video clip for, was what to do in case a service is denied. This was meaningful to me because recently I had some barriers submitted where the care coordinators were telling me that the child's age was cited as a reason for denial of service. And so when I was looking at this EPSDT data, I thought, okay, well, I wonder how the news of the denial was delivered to that care coordinator and that family. And I'm wondering if they knew about their options for appeal and things like that. So I wanted to take just a moment. This will be a slightly longer video clip compared to some of the others, but seems like really important information to share and to be aware of. So I don't know. I need to maybe stop the share and then reshare. Pull up the video. Okay, here we go.
To member rights and what if a requested service is denied. So for OHP members under the age of 21, a service can be denied when the service is not medically necessary and medically appropriate for that individual. I can explain a case example that we just had recently. An individual outgrew their sit stander, happy to get them another one. However, the provider requested the wrong size. So we ended up needing to deny that. However, could make a phone call to that provider and say, what was your intent? Did you really mean for this to be the wrong size? You know, sometimes there are things like that. And they said, no, we just put in the wrong size. So wrong size, let us resubmit. No problem. They resubmitted, we approved. We all went on our happy way. So this does happen. So obviously it was medically necessary, but it was not medically appropriate because it was not the correct size for that individual. So any denial of OHP coverage must be in writing. Providers should not refuse to provide care or make necessary referrals. This is very important, that a denial needs to be in writing. This is not only our requirement, but it is also a requirement from CMS. And one of the reasons is that with that denial are the members and individuals' rights listed on there as to how to appeal or request review. So providers should always make the case to the CCO or OHA for coverage of a medically necessary and medically appropriate service for a member under 21. And we are working very hard on provider education about EPSDT coverage, but some providers may not have heard about the changes in coverage and may make assumptions about coverage. So the more people who know about EPSDT, the changes, the better off we all are. So again, members must be provided a written denial notice when denying a service. This may come from the CCO or from OHA. It must contain a statement of the intended action and effective date, the specific reasons and legal support for the action, an explanation of the individual's appeal and/or hearing rights, and the member's rights to representation. So what is the recourse that our members have and providers? If a member, guardian, or provider disagrees with the denial decision, they can appeal it. Any denial notice should include instructions on how to appeal or request a hearing. And all OHP members have the right to a fair hearing for denials.
All right, so that is information about EPSDT. So, and as I understand, our goal today is we'll just review the content briefly from the last two, from all of the sessions, so 3 in total, and then we'll have a discussion at the end. Okay. Great. So after that, in March, we had a session with our friends from University of Connecticut about the System Reform Support Instrument, or the SRSI. And I know that I had the general feeling or impression that many people found the SRSI difficult to engage with, and that the explanations about it were equally challenging to understand. But whether or not you actually engaged with the SRSI directly, not all of us engaged directly with having that assessment done. And I'm in that position where I can't see anybody's faces for some reason, and I feel very unnerved, but I'll try to keep going. So while not all of us engaged with the SRSI directly, I think there's still some good ideas you can take for it from a very high level. So first off, I think it's just important to remember that the SRSI is organized around key areas of work for our system of care and for our system of care partners. So don't worry about the 140 plus indicators that were in this instrument and that we heard a lot about. Just focus on these large topic areas, which were policy, management, practice, and community. And when we're providing services to children and families, these are the 4 key areas we can pay attention to and kind of organize ourselves around. And then within that, when we think about each of those categories, it can make sense to consider some other dynamics. So for example, when we're thinking about policy and management, it makes sense to consider if we have the leadership and funding available that's needed to accomplish our goals. And it also makes sense to know and define who the population is that you most want to help. And finally, we talk about accountability a lot and being responsible to the community and to each other for the work that we're stating we want to do. Similarly, when we go down to the 3rd row, when we think about practice, we're thinking about how our ideals are put into action and how, when we think about practice and how our ideals and values are put into action through the work of thousands of providers in our area, it makes sense to think about those services and supports that are available in the workforce, and again, to consider accountability. And finally, collaboration and communication with the community is one of our key system of care values. Secondly, when we think about making these plans, when I look at the 3 categories of the SRSI, they have them listed in 3 categories of pre-implementation, implementation, and sustainability. And so for here in Oregon, we mostly engaged around the SRSI in the pre-implementation phase, that as we're planning our different initiatives that we're considering these high-level categories. But just for you to know, the categories remain consistent kind of through each phase of our work. So when we go into implementation phase, we want to be also considering these 4 high-level policy areas. And when we're all done and we're trying to implement our plan, we really want to start thinking about the sustainability and how that effort will last. So it was helpful for me personally when I considered the SRSI, which was kind of overwhelming, to just really focus in that I want to concentrate on these 4 areas as I try to support my local structure and the initiatives they want to undertake. All right. So I do have this queued up, as I said. Thank you for your patience as I click through my different screens. All right. So this is a section of the presentation from the SRSI workshop where they were talking about the results for both our local systems of care and statewide.
Is your overall summary of all of the indicators. The green number is, and all of these slides, is going to be the aggregate of all 8 local system of care regional results. And the yellow is going to be the state SOCAC results. And so what we see overall, right, is that we're at a 15 to 20% implementation of all of the things we could be doing to operate effectively. This has felt a couple of ways. It's felt heavy sometimes when we talk about this in communities, like, oh, that means there's a lot of things we need to be doing. It has also felt like opportunity. Oh, we just did a really deep self-reflection practice of what we're doing that's working and what's not. Now we understand what we could put into practice in order to be a more effective system of care. So it's also felt a little eye-opening, like, oh, I know where we need to go. I invite you to hold both of those realities. I would also invite throughout these next sort of 3 slides, encourage you to see the alignment and the similarity in scores between the SOPAC and the local systems of care. Because one of the stories that's emerging that feels important to me as I help you all think about action planning is that there is this similarity in where we are. We're doing work in similar areas. And to me, that gives us the opportunity to think about, ooh, if we all prioritize a few of the similar indicators to implement, we could see some really big shifts moving forward. Okay, so.
All right. So that is our reminder for our experience with the SRSI. So for me, the biggest takeaways from that video, and I'm just going to reiterate 2 of the things that she stated. One was that in Oregon, we're currently doing about 20% of all the things we could be doing to operate effectively. And again, that 20% comes out of our evaluation of that SRSI and all those indicators I mentioned earlier. So out of all the potential things we could be doing, we're doing about 20%. But I really appreciated how she said that feels really heavy and maybe a little discouraging, but it also feels like a big opportunity. And so it's a chance for us to have a little bit of hope and hone in on that opportunity and really to make system of care the innovative space where we can be doing some new things and branching out into new opportunities. I also really appreciated how she noted that the efforts of our state council and our local systems of care have similar scores and are doing similar work. And so again, if we can all bring together, that means if we all prioritize similar things that we want to implement, we could really see some big results. All right, and then finally, the last section we're looking at was the University of Connecticut. Oh no, there's two more. I'm sorry. University of Connecticut staff also spoke with us about our system of care governance structures. And some key points from that session included that governance structures need to have a common vision, and that common vision needs to actually have actionable steps to move it towards outcomes for a specific goal, along with the effective leadership for policy and funding changes. For me, what really struck me about this was that we needed to have action steps attached to our mission. Some of you have heard me tell the story that in my local system of care, we certainly used to have a common vision, but it was really broad. We pretty much wanted to help all the kids in all the places, at all the times, in all the ways we could, but we didn't actually have concrete action steps attached to that mission. And in retrospect, I can really see how that impacted our work as we tried to move it forward. I also really liked during the session how they talked about the difference between what is a governance structure and what is system management, because I know that some of us have kind of wondered about that term governance structure and what does that mean to us. And that's actually the word that's currently used in our contract with OHA. So basically the governance involves the ability of our committees to make decision-making at a high policy level that has legitimacy, authority, and accountability. And I thought that those three key words they used were very important. We have often talked about authority in terms of having the right people around the table, but also that accountability is a concept worth exploring. And so how are we holding ourselves and our local systems of care accountable for our work? I know in my personal experience, I've had some of my system of care members ask me, can't the CCO do it? Can't HealthShare do it? Isn't the CCO responsible for these different things? And yes, the CCO certainly does have responsibilities, but so do we. And I recall at one of my meetings, I actually made the statement that HealthShare was not the system of care committee, you, the members, are. And so really holding ourselves accountable for the work we want to do. And finally, this concept of legitimacy. And I think that that's not only for our external partners and how they view the system of care framework and system of care work, but also for our own members. Some of you are familiar with our fellow system of care coordinator, Chris Barnes, and Chris Barnes has mentioned a story where a long-term member one day asked her, well, what is the system of care anyway? And so again, wanting to make sure that our members are grounded as well in the legitimacy of the system of care framework and all of the hard work that they themselves are often doing. All right, and I have one more video clip. If there's a better way to share, Christy, than me just going back and forth or stopping share and starting again, please let me know.
Yeah, you're doing great, Selby. Maybe would it be easier like next time if I pulled the slides up and then pulled them down and then you had the videos?
It might be, but we're so close to the end that
Okay,
maybe we can just keep going.
that's true.
All right, so here is one more little clip for you. Oh, that's not sharing the right thing. Oh, it really is unnerving when you can't see the participants. Why?
We're here with you, Selby. You're doing great.
Why doesn't look something? It's not. Okay. Let me try one more time. Okay, here we go. Found it.
I'm just going to say thank you for setting out the structures. I mean, I think our three-tier structure represented in our, we've got to do it in three levels comes from that New York model originally. And
It's not where I wanted to start. I thought I had it keyed up. Just a moment. We'll move past Hillary just barely. Well, actually, that's where I had it marked. So we'll just keep going.
when you embed it in contract, it doesn't flex, and hopefully we're showing that we are flexible even if we can't really change the contract well. So, I'm glad to see where the structure came from. Kind of knew where it was, but thank you for setting that out for us. And I think how to flex within that is really important as we move forward to fit areas' needs.
That's such a good point. And I think part of the flex that may have happened from the New York model is losing the distinction between an individual child and family need and a systemic need. And what can be resolved at what level? And how can we make sure that these tiers are effective, quick, and to the point, and meeting the needs of the children and families? So structures are good to the extent that they're organizing structures and help us move and serve children, youth, and families in system design more effectively. But when they slow down the process, and that's when we should be stepping back and saying, where did we drift? Where did we get away from the original intent? Liz, looks like you might.
All right, so I just wanted to again reiterate what I thought was a really great quote out of that statement, out of that video clip. She made the point that structures are good to the extent that they're organizing structures and help us move and serve children, youth, and families and system design more effectively. But when they slow down the process, then that's when we should be stepping back and saying, where did we drift? Where did we get away from our original intent? And that was meaningful to me. I know that a lot of us within the past few years have really attempted to reconfigure our structures and support our members and what they'd like to accomplish, and to find processes that are meaningful for members and get the work done that we want to have done. And that we have worked hard to put those actionable action steps behind our common visions and mission statements. And so I just thought that that was a really good focal point to help us keep focused on what we want to be doing, and that the structures we build, not only within our committees, but within our community, that we want them to be good to the extent that they organize and help us serve children, youth, and families and system design more effectively. These were the discussion questions from that particular learning collaborative. And again, I just liked them in kind of a general way to keep in mind as I'm thinking about supporting our system of care collaboratives. That just, even though these questions were designed specific for that specific learning collaborative, I think they could be useful for us for any project we want to undertake, about confirming that we know who we want to focus on, and we have a shared purpose, that we are, again, responding to our unique community needs, which have been informed by family and youth voice, that we're looking for those impactful partnerships, and again, keeping accountability in mind for ourselves. And lastly, for May and June, we had some data-driven decision-making sessions in the Learning Collaborative, again, with our staff, our friends from University of Connecticut. A couple of key points from that Learning Collaborative involved the importance of giving data back to our communities and sharing it with them, not just using or reviewing that data in isolation, or even worse, just being extractive in the data we want to pull out. That session was divided into two kind of key agenda items. One was working with this idea about how learning about barriers can lead us to questions. It's very easy to get overwhelmed with data and feel like we have to find all of it. We have to find the most impactful data, and what data do we need? That constant question of what data do we need? And so they really tried to support us in just, when we learn about a barrier, have curiosity about it. And what questions might you have about that barrier? And those questions are the basis for what you might want to learn or find out. We also talked about how we can connect those barriers to our strategic priorities. Again, if we have a common vision with action steps that we want to take and we have identified priorities, how are those barriers helping us to move the work forward on, how would resolving those barriers help us to remove the work forward on those strategic priorities that we have identified? At that time, the process actually from my own local Tri-County system of care was shared as an example where we have 8 priority questions that we apply to each of our barrier submissions to help us identify their alignment with our strategic priority, and that helps us to define where we feel we can take the most impactful action. All right, and it is now time for our final exciting video clip. Dun, dun. All right, except I'm missing that video, so I'm going to click on the link here in the thing. All right. Sure, we're queued up. We're good. Here we go.
We talked about how data is hard, but we also demonstrated within 15 minutes what we were able to brainstorm as well. And it's the value of having partners at the table, right? Thinking about all of these different angles, different data points, different system perspectives that do make it easier. So then, to your point, Selby, how do you get the partners to the table, get them interested in data, and then use their data to show that common agenda, that common shared population of focus, and common desire and need to address the needs of those populations? That's why Kim and I geek out over data, in a nutshell.
All right, so again, the key takeaway from that video clip for me was what can be done in 15 minutes. And I should put that in I should have given you a little more context of the video before I played it. Part of the exercise we did was we were in small groups and we each had a barrier to look at, and we attempted to show curiosity about that barrier and what questions we might have. And then we looked at our state data dashboard to get some answers to those questions. And so what I really appreciated in that video clip is she mentions that we demonstrated what could be done in 15 minutes. That again, data can feel so overwhelming and it can feel so challenging, but just in that 15 minutes in our small groups, we were each able to come away, identify some questions and come away with some data to answer those questions. And when you think about what can be done in 15 minutes, I think that makes the whole experience a little bit less threatening. And so that is my my input into kind of providing, I hope, a good overview and refresher of what we covered in those 4 learning collaboratives. Thank you very much. Happy to see your faces again.
Great job, Selby. Thank you.
Yeah, Selby, you rocked it. I'm so impressed. Okay, so that was a review. If those little video clips got your appetite to see what else was discussed in that learning collaborative, those are all online. We have a fancy YouTube channel, y'all. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. We're also posting full council meetings there now as well. So hopefully we'll be building out some valuable resources and videos of interest. But yeah, let's talk about it. So EPSDT, SRSI, governance structures, and data. kind of what resonated with you? What have you already started doing in your communities? What barriers are you continuing to face? And what are your next steps? Shall we move into breakouts for a few minutes? So everyone has time to talk. Okay. Everybody clear what we're gonna go chat about? Okay, we'll put you there for 15 minutes. We'll see you back here at 3:55.
Christy, do you have the prompts?
Do you know if the prompts went out? Oh, you found them. Perfect. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for coming, Roberta. You're muted.
It's activating, but I'm here.
I know. That's why I appreciate you pushing through and doing what you need to. Hey, friends.
Hello.
So, Christiana, I was going to drive my son to his orthodontist appointment, and then I was like, you can ride your bike. So, I do not have to leave at 4:15.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll just see where the conversation goes and how much time we need.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I think everyone is back. I don't know if you prefer, Christiana, to sort of start things off, or I'm happy to, however feels best.
I will let you because I'm very visual. I would actually like to see those questions again. Let me see if they're in the chat.
Here, I can just pull them up.
That
I've got
would
them
be
up
great.
on my screen. Slideshow. Come on, friend. Current slide. Okay, and share.
We could certainly make it work together, but I think the idea is just for us to share out and hear from groups about what are some of the things that you all took away from the learnings that we've had, and how have you implemented these in your strategies at your system of care. Does anybody want to share out on that first question there? What actions have you taken as a result of these collaboratives?
How about somebody from room 1, which was Heather, JB, Roberta, and Tracy? Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for being here. So Heather, JB, Roberta, if you will. I know some of you are not members of your local system of care, so that might not be a question you could answer, but what was the discussion around that topic?
I think we ran a little rogue on the conversation, and we were really talking about service navigation and the need to really understand what is happening locally and how do we get that information. So yeah, I wouldn't say we really answered that question, but we did have a very intriguing conversation, and it was really great to hear about the needs of families locally and different efforts that are happening around to share those pieces.
One thing that, thank you so much, Heather. One thing that was also shared in our group is that there's this need for more outreach from system of care to family members. That because this is a lot of this was like not necessarily we were hearing it for the first time. There were a couple of us who haven't been part of this collaborative very long, so apologies. But like we said, we went rogue, and so, but we were just like, wow, why didn't we know about this stuff? You know, like why, you know, and so like ways to do more outreach to the community about what's available, and then Heather also shared an awesome program that's being opened up. That's like a drop-in. I'm gonna not describe it well, but like a drop-in system of care navigation support for families. Yeah.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. So that's what we started talking about was like, wait, how, when, and how can we get this to all the counties? So
I love that. Okay. I mean, and a valuable conversation is a valuable conversation. So I'm glad you went rogue if it took you to a place you wanted to go. How about group 2? Amanda, Christy, Lucy, Selby.
Well, I can share. We talked a little bit about barriers in getting and using data, and how we love the idea of data informed decision making, but how hard that really is to actually, make operational. And we really appreciated Selby sharing that, actually, yeah, I mean, just the idea that maybe data uh, isn't everything anyway. And that if we are, hearing experientially, anecdotally about issues, and we know that, they need to be addressed, we can just, just do it. Yeah, yes, it would be nice to have a whole data report to sort of prove that the work needed to be done, but it's also okay to just not stress too much about that um, and jump into taking action. So it was a good conversation.
Excellent. How about group 3? Christiana, Dana, Danny, and Karen.
Does anyone in my group want to speak? Otherwise, I can just kind of piggyback on the data piece. Okay. We also talked a lot about data and how there's so much data already at the level of the service, and so there's all of those requirements and how challenging it can be to add like an additional layer of data, and talking about the importance of meaningful data for the system of care and what's meaningful for the community and how that kind of overlaps with also like required program data. And so hasn't been any movement or change yet about data, but just having some thought around the data piece based on our conversation.
Excellent. And room 4, I don't think you probably dug into this particular conversation because I hopped in your room for a minute, but do you have anything you want to report out or share from the discussion that was had in that space?
Well, thank you, Anna. Of course I do. Hi, everybody. Haley here. I got to spend some one-on-one time with Joylene, which was perfect because I was going to blow up her email anyways with questions, and I got Anna for a minute. But I do feel like one of the conversations we had always ties into SOC things, and it's how to maintain, and do it in a way that doesn't make you feel yucky inside for family and youth voice. And so Joylene shared that she has worked with so many of you, and you've shared ways that you utilize family and youth voice and how you tap into it, especially when you find yourselves in a situation like we're kind of in Lane County, which is like, oh, there's just too much to do, and there's not enough time to devote to family and youth voice in the way that it deserves. So I'm going to email Joylene, and I think that there's maybe room for a bigger conversation with all of us on this. Anything to add, Joylene?
Thank you, Haley. I fully agree. I don't know how many of you all here are sharing that same experience of just struggling to juggle all the things that are in the role of being an SOC coordinator, but also wanting to do youth and family engagement well and meaningful, but there's just so much on your plate. And so Haley and I are going to chit chat and maybe scheme and bring back some ideas of how we can all learn from each other, because everyone in this space, at least the coordinators, are dealing with very similar juggling of tasks. Thanks, Haley.
Excellent. So, that was kind of focusing on what actions have we taken. If there are more specific, challenges or barriers, I think Lucy maybe named some data barriers, right? Finding it, knowing if it's helpful, using it, and letting it be a barrier to action. I'm curious to find out if anybody, whether you discussed it in your small group or not, the information that Selby covered throughout the beginning of this conversation. Has it changed your continuum of services and supports? Has your local system been able to make better connections or improve access because of the conversations that we've had in this learning collaborative space? And no is fine if that's the truth, but I'm just curious. Dana says no. Roberta says no.
In some ways, it feels almost too early since the learning collaboratives were just basically in the last quarter almost, or a little bit before that, to know that if it's, impacted the actual continuum of services and supports in the community. I can say though that like it's feeding into some previous learnings we had about how we're approaching data, how we're approaching our barriers, how we're trying to be really strategic and choosing what we address. I feel like a lot of the things from the last few learning collaboratives have kind of built on some of the work we did last year or reinforced it. So I think the potential for future impact is there.
Excellent. Thanks, Selby. Is there anything anybody else wants to say on that particular topic? What about next steps? Did anybody talk about next steps that they could take or want to take in reflecting on this information?
I think honestly, like in our county, system of care is still like really young, right? And we're just trying to figure it out. So to take other information and implement it and know where to do it, that's kind of one of the questions I had is like, are we supposed to be doing this at practice level work group, advisory committee? Like, it'd be nice to have like more direction, I guess, rather than kind of like free range.
I would love to work with you on that, Dana. I mean, there isn't a like you have to do it this way and there's only one right answer. That like doesn't really exist in Oregon in general. And there are some things that are working. I mean, if you want to go to a local council office hour, you can bounce ideas and questions off your peers and find out what's working in other systems or what they tried and didn't work that you go make new mistakes and learn from theirs. And I'm happy to sit with you and talk about sort of here's what the intent was of those three structures and how it has played out well in some spaces. And I think Danny and I, Danny's not here right now, but oh yeah, Danny's here. We had that conversation a long time ago. And Danny, I don't know if you want to speak to like how that was helpful in your structure management, but when we were kind of talking about like why practice level work group and then advisory and then exec and how's that all supposed to work? I'm totally putting you on the spot and you don't have to say anything, but
okay. So what do you need me to elaborate on? I don't quite understand.
Just sort of like what work goes where within that sort of tri-level structure and how do you like why the three layers basically?
Yeah, why do
your
they work?
council was kind of doing it upside down and then we talked about it and you were like, oh, this does make sense.
Yeah, so what was happening is before I came into the picture here, they were just kind of winging it. And really the most functional group was the executive, well, I shouldn't say functional, most active group was the executive council. And so they were bringing barriers in there at the top level with the executive directors and, directors of different agencies. And there was nowhere to problem solve those barriers. And so they would go to SOCAC, but that it wasn't the appropriate or proper way to do it. And so we kind of flipped it on its head and we started more at the ground level with the people who are working directly with the kids. So we've got the practice level work group. That is going really well. They don't identify a ton of barriers at that level. Usually they come in at the mid-level with we call it the Collaborative Youth Action Alliance, but it's the advisory council. Because it's more of like the mid-level management. They have a little bit more influence. They have a little bit more pull as far as funding streams. And they have more connections within the communities. And so we do get probably more barrier resolution there. But yeah, just turning it around and starting from the ground up has given us an opportunity to resolve things locally, which I think has strengthened our systems of care within our different counties and also in our region, which has been a big accomplishment because in Central Oregon specifically, our counties are very intentionally segregated. Maybe segregated is not the word, but they're very independently functioning and they don't love to collaborate. And this process has allowed and forced them to do that. And it's actually been pretty successful and it's a good start at least. So yeah, so that's been really good. And I think hopefully it has decreased the huge stream of barriers we're bringing to SOCAC that are so repetitive that it's like, hey, we need money still. Hey, we still need services. Like, yeah, we all know that. So instead of continuing to like compounding the door down, it's still on our reports, it's still being reviewed and known, but it's not creating a task for something that is unable to be accomplished right now. So I think that overall it has been a pretty good effort, and I think that the fruits of that labor has been a lot better than before.
Thanks, Danny. Dan, I see your hand up. Do you have more you want to say?
Yeah, I would say that our county is very close to what Danny's talking about. I think when I say young, you know, I think there's lots of system of care coordinators that were given a job, right? And then they're tasked to figure that out in a community.
Build
And
the plane while you fly it.
I know. And so maybe we need somewhere where there's just more direction, like with the CCOs in particular, because I feel like the CCOs, I mean, we task system of care to the CCOs, right? But then they task it to a person. And then what? Like they're just supposed to build that plane while they're flying it and figure it out. And every county is going to look different, which is fine. But then what are next steps? Like how do we go to like phase 2 kind of making the processes better in our community? Because there's not one person that I know in our community or community partners or in the helping field that don't want to make this better. Like everybody wants to make it better, but how do we do it? So it's like we need like a phase 2. That's all.
I have never even met you before, ma'am, and I feel like I paid you to show up and say what you just said. So I don't know where you live, but I'll send you a check. So I have been sitting with exactly what you just named, and sort of how do local councils become part of the structural change that we know, like everybody wants this to work. We have money allocated to make this work. Whether it's enough or not is a conversation we could have, but it's not for lack of investment, right? And so I feel like it's lack of appropriate structure. And part of that to me is local systems are so different from one another. And so what needs to be different so that they're relevant to communities and they feel safe and appropriate for specifically family members and youth who have been often left out of the conversation or intentionally pushed out of the conversation, and what needs to be clear and consistent structurally so that each local council is part of the system improvement, dare I say, system transformation that is necessary so that young folks get the care they need in communities to the greatest extent possible. And so that's a big question that I'm sort of sitting with, is like, so then Dana's point, like, then what next, right? You have the local system, you have the mandate in the CCO contract. Cool. Now what? So I would love to have that be part of our strategic planning conversation and figure out what is your role that you're going to be the action partner in, and what other supports do we need a mandate for DHS to participate? Do we need a mandate for ODE, right? How do we make it just not $200,000 to the CCO and then it like poof solve the children's system? Because that's not going to work. So I don't have your answer, Dana, but I would love to partner with you to co-create that answer. And all of you who were just nodding along, let's do this work together. 2025 is the year of the Children's System Strategic Plan. Yay! And that's recorded and it's going on the internet, so we'll have to do it. There were a couple of other questions. Let me scroll down to the other. Okay, Christy, do you want to do the poll now or at the very end?
Yeah, I have to bounce. I have to depart the meeting now. But if you want to do the poll, do you see it? You should have access to it.
So we wanted to try to do, oh, here we go, polls and quizzes, a
Yeah.
feedback poll, learning collaborative evaluation.
Yeah.
It is 3 questions.
Yeah.
So not a huge lift, but we're hoping to find out what did you think about this topic? And then, so I'm going to launch it. And then we'll take a minute to see what comes up in the poll. Can you all see it? Okay. Thanks, those of you who are heading out. Appreciate you being here. Okay. Can you see the answers too? I've never done a Zoom poll like this. Okay. Let me see if I hit end poll. If you haven't gone yet and you want to go.
I think the missing response is me, maybe because I'm co-presenter or something. I couldn't answer the
You
questions.
didn't get it? Okay.
That's okay though.
Sorry, Sylvie. Let's end it and then I'll share the results. Now can you see? Okay. So for the first question, how likely are you to recommend today's learning collaborative to another system of care partner? A third of you said extremely likely. About half, almost half said very likely. 22% said somewhat likely. No one said not at all likely, so it wasn't terrible. That's good. Setting low expectations. How much of the information presented today was new to you? One person said all of it. 2 people said most of it. And about 2/3 of us said some of it. So I think good to review, right? Bringing some of this stuff back. Selby, Christiana, planning team folks. This was a good idea. How likely are you to do something with the information that you learned today? One of us is extremely likely. One of us is very likely. 6 of us are somewhat likely to use this information. And one of us is not at all likely to share this information. Is there anything that comes up in these questions that you want to say, here's why I answered the way I did, or what I think you should know to do better next time? You don't have to. You are very welcome to share opportunities for improvement or topics that you'd want to see in a future learning collaborative. Our next topic is how to be an ally in Indian country with our partner, the Native Wellness Institute. And then Selby, I think after that we have Marietta.
Yeah, my colleague Marietta, Gary Smith from HealthShare will be coming again with a similar topic of how to be an ally to Black and Brown people in our system of care work.
So we already have our next 2 topics covered. So if you wanted to suggest, oh, could you please address this topic? We'd slot it in down the road, but those recommendations, especially from system coordinators, like, Dana, if you're like, can you please give us this exact information? Ask for it. We will work to get it for you.
Well, thank you for that, Anna. I just want to say that the review, had I not missed the past 5 months for my leave, I still would have found it useful, right? And especially because getting to hear Selby's take on it, right? And getting to hear what she pulled from it. I found that to be really useful because sometimes I sit and I hear what people say and then I'm too embarrassed to ask, like, but what does that mean? And so getting to hear from my system of care, peers and partners to hear like what they took from it, I'm like, oh, it's not so scary. So doing this, like, I don't know, once or twice a year or quarterly or something. I mean, I thought this was a beneficial model, and also just having the freedom of space for us all to converse in this way, because there aren't many other spaces where we also get our partners who are not necessarily, in the SOC world, right? So to have this space, and sometimes we have a lot of our community partner friends, this is a great platform for that. So just want to say I really enjoyed today. Thank you.
Thank you. Selby, were you gonna add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the plan, Haley, is to kind of incorporate this where we'll have like 2 sessions and then a review, like you said, to do it quarterly and just kind of have that be a rolling type of format moving forward.
Roberta?
So I was just wondering, I love the summary. I thought that was fantastic because of course I didn't participate in a number of them. So just seeing what all was covered was lovely. Um, is there ever going to be a map of what services are available by what county? Because um parents don't have any idea what's out there. Um, I'm learning something new every day. The opening slide, I came into it at about 15 minutes in. I'd never heard of that, and both of my kids have OHP. So it's just interesting that there's so much probably out there that nobody knows about. And so since you have partners from all over the state and different parts of the system of care here, it'd be really neat to see a statewide map of what's out there for services for families.
I super agree, Roberta. We have tried. The challenge in terms of a statewide map is that the minute you finish making it, a new service is created or a service you have on it doesn't exist anymore. It's like you really need a dedicated, this is a full-time job for a couple of people to keep it updated and relevant so that it is useful for families and youth. There was a contract that OHA had that was building a map like that, and that contract wasn't able to be continued for a variety of reasons. So that map is like 30% built. The System of Care Advisory Council has looked at picking up that map. I know OHA's Child and Family Behavioral Health team has looked at picking up that map. And SOCAC is also thinking about other ways, like what if we had I don't know if you've ever heard of like, oh my gosh, now I can't think of the acronym for it, but it's like 211. It's a special where you just call and they have all of the resources and it's like, oh, you need this type of thing. Here are the different types of services. So we're looking at that in 2025 as a potential contract as well. So the answer is no, but you are being heard and we are trying to figure out how to be responsive to that. Any other questions or comments to wrap up our conversation today?
I was just going to ask, does the chat automatically save, Anna, or do we need to do something to intentionally save it? Because there's some good conversation about a future topic around barriers and coming together to have a conversation about barriers, whether in this space or in office hours, maybe on a quarterly basis. So I just want to make sure we don't lose that information for further discussion.
So the chat saves to whoever's like the local host, it automatically just like a weird text file of it saves. And then I think it also might save to Corinna's computer because she's the one who's recording today's meeting. So Corinna, if you don't get the chat, please let me know and let's go through it. And maybe Christiana, you want to like help us, right? Like I can share that chat with you and you can be like, oh, I know, because I wasn't watching those things pop up. So maybe you can help. Private chats don't get stored, only the ones that came out publicly. So if you
Also,
private chatted an idea to Christiana, I won't see it.
I think it's
and if you pop out the chat and you look, it's got those three little dots right in the right hand corner. And if you click on those and pull it down, the first option is save chat.
Oh, have at it if you thanks, Selby. And I will just want to say out loud, Dana, you're still here. I got your email address and I'll send you an email.
Yeah, I do think the review was very helpful. And perhaps because of the review, the polls looked the way that they did, right? So what are you going to do with today's information, right? It was a review, so probably not lots of us will do something with it.
Good point.
So they're a little skewed, I think, the questions, yeah. The answers to the questions.
And I still feel like, okay, good, right? Like we're still kind of making progress. And if we keep doing, like if we do these next two sort of how to be better allies, and then we do a poll, a reflection and poll there, I expect to see like, oh, I have lots of like, I could take this small step or I could take that small step or at this huge policy change, whatever comes up. So I'm excited.
Good job.
Thank you. All right, friends. Well, with these 5 extra minutes you have in your day, I'm sure you're going to go write your first major novel. So you're welcome. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you all soon.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.